I got a good friend on today's pod. She is somebody I worked with for a long time. She now lives in Paris. She has a new book out called Smart Mouth. If you want to know about wine, building a Momofuku beverage program, and a little bit about living in Paris and why it's so much fucking better to cook there and eat there, stay tuned. Welcome to the Dave Chang Show, part of the Ringer Podcast Network, presented by Major Demo Media. Thank you, Allah Tango, as always. I'm cooking oxtails, and I did that in a red wine-based sauce. I guess there's a French name for it, but I don't know what the name of it is. But we're eating in the aftermath of it all. It's pretty goddamn good. I also baked some bread, so stay tuned for the end of the podcast where we show you some edited versions of how we made that. The reason I'm making that is because we had an Ask Dave question a couple podcasts ago that were about what was the best sort of Asian-inspired meat, protein to eat. And I don't know, chicken, there's a bunch. But for whatever reason, I said oxtail. And that's why we're cooking it today. But we didn't take it to Asia. We took this to France. And I made this with a mirepoix, some thyme, some red wine, and it really came out delicious. I made some flatbread, so stay tuned for the end of the podcast to check that out. I have Jordan Salcito. She has a book out that's called Smart Mouth, Wine Essentials for You, Me, and Everyone We Know. She wrote this book. I wrote a blurb for it too. It's extremely approachable. It's a great gift. And I wanted her on here because Jordan has this remarkable ability to sort of distill wine knowledge into things that are easy to understand and fun and can make it engaging. So there's a lot of people that send us inbounds about wine. So this was a perfect timing because she's on book tour. Plus, she can tell you a little bit about probably vineyards and winemakers you've never heard of, sometimes I've never heard of. She's just extremely knowledgeable, but this book is very, very approachable. So go check it out. A little bit about Jordan. She, from the Denver area, she worked at Danielle. She worked at WD-50. She worked for Momofuku for several years. She started her own beverage company called RAMONA, which is wine spritz, and it's delicious stuff. You probably see it in many, many places, grocery stores, you name it. Also hotels, restaurants, etc. It's fantastic. And she's married to Robert Bohr, sort of seminal figure in American wine. They're both good friends, and they're both living in Paris. And I think that my wife and I are pretty jealous because we don't get to see them that much. In fact, I haven't seen her since 2020, before the pandemic. But Jordan she just knows so much about wine, and she has an extraordinary work ethic, and she is extremely sort of intentional in everything she does. So if you want to learn more about wine, if you want to learn more about sort of having a career in hospitality and then striking out on your own, she also, they've exited a lot of their restaurant portfolio, but they started some great restaurants in New York City as well. She's done it all. And there's very few people that have done almost every sort of kind of job in the restaurant business. So Jordan, very, very lucky to have her. So stay tuned. We're going to get to that interview right now. I'm joined with someone that's a sight for sore eyes, Jordan Salcito, friend. I have not seen her since before the pandemic, like right before. You were doing a launch for RAMONA, and that is her canned wine, and we'll talk about that in a second. But she's somebody I've known a long time. I've also good friends with her husband. They are a couple that, to me, were sort of synonymous with like New York City dining and wine for so many years. And then, at least I'm still in America, because they moved to Paris, and I'm totally jealous. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. It's so good to see you.
And you're on tour for this guy.
Yes.
What is this?
Okay, so this is a book. It's called Smart Mouth: Wine Essentials for You, Me, and Everyone We Know. And this was like, this was initially I got into restaurants because I was sort of like, oh, I want to write, and so did other people. And so it was like, okay, I guess I'll get a hostess job first. And so that's sort of how it started. And I remember I wrote up Amanda Hesser, she didn't know who I was, so she was the interim critic at the time, and she agreed to meet with me, and I was like, I want to write, and she was like, yeah, you and everyone else go and learn something, work somewhere for 10 years, learn something about an industry, and maybe you'll write a book someday. And that was that.
There you go.
And then you sort of forget about it, and then anyway, so here we are. So I'm very excited about it.
But you've done just about everything you can do in working in restaurants. Right? Hostess at WD-50 was where it was sort of wait a minute, let me recorrect the course of the dream here, because it was such a cool place to be part of. And but again, seminal restaurant. Stuff.
No, it's true. And then I got to cook in the kitchen at Danielle, and then he was the one who was like, you clearly like wine, you're working for free on your mornings off, you should think about that. And then that led to Harvest in France, and then came back and I got to work at some really amazing places.
And then you became our beverage
director.
wine director.
The minute where I was like, oh no, I have to get out of restaurants, and then you and I ended up at this, or I ended up at this. It was for our friend Wells.
Wells Guthrie.
Guthrie, yes. And exactly. And then I remember you were looking for a beverage.
And we known each other before then. But this was an opportunity where we're just hanging. It was me, Josh Pinsky, I can't remember who else, but we were cooking. It's a beautiful farmhouse, and it was a 12. We served a lot of food.
And it was gorgeous. And I just remember watching dish after dish after dish. So long.
12 years ago, and we served so many dishes, and it was one of the best dinners I think we've ever cooked. I think it was the last time I put a lot of effort into those things. And what I remember, though, is the pairings and what you chose were just sort of off the charts. They were so good for everything. Because pairing for our food sometimes can be really difficult.
It's not cookie cutter. No, it's true. And that's what made it so fun, I think. But also you, as a boss, were very different in the best way, in that I remember I was on my way out of restaurants. You were like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I've just decided to not be in restaurants anymore. And then I think it was half an hour later, you were like, wait, actually can you meet tomorrow? Because we're looking for someone to oversee the beverage program. And we chatted, and I had this idea of a sparkling pairing at Co or something. And you're like, that's what I've been trying to do for so long. I've been wanting to do that for years. And then I remember you also said, you know the rules, now break them. We want a great program. I don't care how you do it. Make a great wine program, go.
Because I like to drink nice things.
Yes.
You know that. I like to drink, and I like to drink things that most people would abhor at. They just find that to be not what you would drink. But, I was like, whoa, you know a side of wine that I think we needed, right?
It was so much fun. It was such a fun sort of directive with so much flexibility, as long as it was in the name of delicious and in the name of excellence.
We had a lot of fun. And then you started your own beverage company.
I did, yes. So RAMONA, I think that was sort of, I remember I think sometimes for me at least, an idea will percolate. And there were a few things that happened. I think the first time I remember having this idea was on the floor at Sambar. And it's there's, this is obviously, it's casual excellence. It's why doesn't that exist in beverage? It should. And there were just so many moments where I'd go and have a lobster roll with Robert over the summer, and he'd order a beer. And I know you love beer, but I'm not a beer person. It's why isn't there something that isn't beer that's delicious? And so I would just always have sparkling water. And it just felt like there was something, there was just a huge gaping wide hole for something that tasted good, wasn't poisonous, wasn't like, in terms of, I mean, I guess I shouldn't go there because there's all this alcohol research right now, which I have so many opinions about, but it was basically like, something organic, something that tastes good, something that's made with intention and integrity.
And a great name, and you were just the face of this new movement that wine was going to be more accessible and I felt like it went from, finance bros trying to drink all the, white Burgundy, and then it was the James Murphy era, which was all organic, biodynamic wine.
Right.
And like the next era, like the third wave of the past sort of 20 years, was making wine just approachable as a beverage as it is in France.
Yes, exactly. And I think, that is, so I actually, in the course of writing this book, there were so many, like a couple of times, like my editor was like, you said like 25 words about this country, but 5 million words about France. And it's like, well, those are just better wines. Like, let's just call it Spain here. Like, well, you can't do that. You have to figure out a way to
Can you express that? Because I would say some people might get really upset.
Yes.
Right?
And so basically what I had to do was like defend to my editor. It's like, well, okay, let's look at, let's like take auction markets and, sort of that nonsense out of it. Like, I've had a lot of wines. You've had a lot of wines. And there are some really interesting wines made everywhere. Absolutely. But when you are looking at excellence, like when it's like soulful, so soulful, you feel it in your bones. Most of those wines for me they've come from France. Of course, some of them come from Italy. There are some like that from Spain, even here in the United States, and certainly Germany, and on and on and on. But I got really curious. It's like, why are the benchmark wines that sort of everyone can agree on, like why are so many of them French? And the reason, it turns out, is that it was the Gauls, so the ancient French people before there was France, were the very first ones to treat winemaking as an art. And it was sort of this approach to something that was a beverage, but something that was also art. And therefore you have this sort of soulful, it's like that Rick Rubin quote where he's talking about like it's all about intention. And if you take away the intention, you just have the ornamental shell of whatever the thing is. Like, remember like the era of 1 fragillion pork buns everywhere? And it's like everyone's sort of being like, that was a good idea. Let me sort of slap something together. And like you find them in like every town everywhere.
But I find it sometimes hard because I don't want to sound like a snob, but I'm like, the best wines, most of them come from France, and most of the people that know anything, even know nothing, will say that the best wines come from France. I don't need to hear like super Tuscans and super Cabs. Like, those are not wines that I love.
Right.
They're like, I say, I love them if I have a cigar, or like, they're just too big, and there's not a lot of nuance to me.
Yes.
But again, that pisses a lot of people off.
Yes.
Right? Why does it piss off the super Tuscan, super Cab people?
I think,
With the cultish Napa, Sonoma area.
Right. And I think it's like everyone's coming to it with a point of view. I think people bring to the wine that they are responsible for their own sort of vision. I think there was the era of there was like the Robert Parker era where he was really like very, very influential starting in the 1980s. And I think wine, it's like if you sort of rewind through American history, basically like as soon as America was starting to get its footing, which by the way was not until, it was quite recent in the history of time because there's this root louse that lives in American soil, and so people would bring over, like Thomas Jefferson's a good example, would bring over vines and like try to plant them and grow his own vineyards with French vines, and they would die.
And Virginia has grapes.
They do.
They have muscadine, I think.
They do. They have Merlot. They have a lot of things now.
But again, no one would say that they're good.
It's true. I'm not gonna counter argue that.
They're drinkable.
They really are, and like, but I don't buy them. I mean, I can't tell you probably the last time I had one was when I was working at Momofuku.
We had some funky stuff.
Somebody can buy it.
Another thing that I always find is especially my friends, and some of them, as you know, you're friends with them too, are some of the great winemakers in California. And I'm always like, I'm not having this awkward conversation, but I feel like one of the underlying things is, well, the vines here just aren't as old. They're only like 100 years old.
Yep.
And no matter what I try to do, because I know nothing, truly, you know this, but I know some things, and I'm always like, well, it tastes different because the vines there are hundreds of years old, and that makes a difference. Why does that make a big difference?
Okay, so, and 100% all of this, I think the other thing, in addition to vine age, which we'll chat about, is the actual soil underneath, because that, like France happens to have a ton of limestone, and limestone does interact with the microbes in the soil and produces a specific sort of special other quality. So that's another part of it. And then the other thing that I thought was so interesting, again, it was writing this book, and it was sort of like, how can I defend this point of view? Which isn't, it's not, and that's not what the book is about. It is, much more general as well. But you have this like New World style wine is very reliant upon technology, and Old World style wine is much more sort of pays homage to terroir. Like, for example, there's no word for winemaker in French. It's called vigneron, vine grower. With this sort of, and like on the bottle, like in a bottle of Burgundy, for example, the biggest name is always going to be the name of the vineyard versus the name of the person making the wine, which is like the opposite of the US. And so you have technology and this sort of like control, and there are good aspects of that. But right, you have a much shorter history of education and sort of understanding the soil. You have a bunch of reliance on technology, this sort of desire to sort of form things for someone's palate versus like making something that maybe expresses the land. And I think those are obviously generalizations for anyone who's watching this who makes beautiful wine here in California.
We're not, that's the hardest part. You don't want to, we're not talking poorly.
No, we're not. But they're just different. They're different philosophies. And of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but largely, and this is like directly out of Jancis Robinson's World Atlas of Wine, or Oxford Companion to Wine. So it's like the tome. Like she's like the top of the top in terms of like wine academics. And I was like, okay, that's a really beautiful way of thinking about it, because it is true. Like, for example, like the one time I worked harvest, like I had done a bunch of harvest in France, and then I worked harvest in California one year. And on the way to the harvest, the winemaker was like, oh, we're just going to make a quick stop at the wine shop because I want to buy some defoaming agent. And I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, what does that do? Like, is it like as basic as it sounds? Yeah, it's like a mess, if like the foam boils over and then like I have to clean it up and that's annoying. So like we'll just add this chemical and then poof, no foam, no cleanup. Like let's go have a pizza party instead, which is like the opposite of my experience in a lot of the best Burgundy wineries, where it's much more about, in fact, like. One of my favorite examples was with the Meunier sisters. And one day, I show up for harvest and they're like, okay, great. Actually, there's nothing to do today. We just have to wait. So we instead made a tasting. We made like a day for you to learn about barrel making. And that was my day.
So this is the problem with the wines of France, particularly wines of Burgundy and Bordeaux. They're just so goddamn expensive.
They are so freaking expensive.
Even the trash is fucking expensive.
I know. It's so true. It's so true.
So it's like, it's hard without sounding classist to somebody that's younger, right? Yeah. Which is why I always say the biodynamic, the Jura Populaire, all of these wines became something that was synonymous with being younger, and this is our wine.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they could afford it.
Yes.
And even that is now getting pricey.
It's so true. It's so true. And now with tariffs and the rising cost of the euro versus the dollar, right? It's such a hard moment for wine.
So what do we do here? How do you get younger people to taste what you know as the best stuff? Yeah. And these amazing vineyards and wine growers making stuff that is just like, we're like, once you taste, you're like, oh, that's
special. That's art. That's
what's going on here? Because it's still tasting it minutes after.
Yes. That's such a good question. I mean, I think it's sort of like, so much of it is being able to have the opportunity to do that. So I think for me, and I don't know like how well this resonates, but I think when you get to see the people, when you get to understand the stories, and when you sort of can look at wine as a form of art, which is also so very French. Like now, living there, like you walk down the street, and whether it's like Space Invader mosaic art on the wall, or you walk by the Louvre, or the art is so much a part of culture there, and of course it is here in the U.S. as well, but in a different way. I think it's like I think what maybe wine makers who are doing it right are doing something they believe in, and connecting with consumers, connecting with people, meeting people where they are. I think we all read these same stories about alcohol right now, and I also, by the way, drink a lot less than I used to. I'm a mom of 2 kids. I get up at 5:30 in the morning now, whereas like I used to go to bed at 4:30 in the morning. And it's so different, but I think it's like actually, I like referencing your conversation with Alex Strubeck from a recent episode. I loved it. He was like, "No, it's good and bad," and I think that continues to be true in wine and in beverage. And so I think one of the reasons why Ramona is still around and doing as well as we are is because there's just a different value system. So I think it's like finding the people who share that value system. And there are a lot of people. People want to do better things for their body. People want to learn. People want to connect with people who are doing interesting things. And I think that has to continue, because there is an ocean of bad wine from France, from everywhere, So it's sort of like maybe this is the moment where...
Yeah, I had to ask because I don't have that answer. I don't know, but I feel like without getting to taste and know, it's hard to have a lay of the land in terms of what's happening. And that's actually the problem, right? And I don't know. I wish I had an answer, but I don't drink nearly as much as I used to, but it also depends on who you're hanging out with to drink this.
Totally. And also maybe restaurants, like that should have been my first answer. It's like that is where great wine is still available, because that is where, and so you pick a place where there's somebody in charge who's doing a cool thing with the program, when you know that there's thought behind the program, there are always people running programs who are like, I have half a bottle of whatever, this Bateau Morche open because whatever, there was a wine dinner or whatnot. So like go to places where people are drinking wine, and honestly, just be curious. If you're curious, there are so many opportunities.
And there's places like in LA, they have Anna Jack Tai with this fabulous wine program, and I see what's happening. They're introducing a new audience to kinds of wine that people didn't know about, and it's not necessarily cheap, but they're able to direct people and to educate people. So, a lot of it is on the restaurants themselves. But, the other problem is if they're not drinking that wine, people are drinking just less in general.
Totally.
Are people drinking less in France?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I know. People are. I mean, I'm part of that.
I'm drinking a non-alcoholic. I'm drinking athletic, mainly because I like it because it's like refreshing. It's not like sparkling water.
Yeah. It has flavor.
It's not like I drank beers during the day before, but I'm also had a Diet Coke earlier. Like, it's just, but I'm not drinking at all, really, unless I go out to dinner, unless there's a nice nice bottle.
It's a moment.
Yeah,
like
it's a moment.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen? Because if the good wines are only getting more astronomically expensive, because they are, it's insane. The prices on certain lots of wine are just, you're like, what the hell?
True.
It's like crypto or something. Like, what the hell is going on?
It's true.
And the people that are, honestly, there's probably 1,000 people that own all this stuff.
Yeah. I think that's also
really
true. It's true, and then now, so also pre-2008, there was a 80% import tax in Hong Kong, and then the mayor of Hong Kong reduced it to 40% and then to 0. So by 2008, you then had Hong Kong open up, which then quickly led to mainland China, and now it's amazing because you have this world that is drinking more wine, but as a result, these few great bottles are very much in demand, and the price is insane.
Well, we're not going to answer any of these questions today, but What is this, and who is this book designed for, Smart Mouth?
Okay, so I wrote this thinking of like myself when before I got into wine, slash so many friends who are in finance or in politics or not in restaurants, and who always, I'm sure you get these texts all the time too, where it's like, oh, what should I drink? I'm at this restaurant, or like, hey, I'm trying to stay down on sugar, like, can I have this Pinot Noir, or or like, how do I navigate this wine list? And there's so many bad wine lists out there. Like, there are a lot of wine lists where I see the list and I'm like, cool, I'm having a margarita, or I'm having a sparkling water or a mocktail or whatever. So I think it's like, for me, the thing that resonated and that makes something interesting is like when you know your value system and when you have a framework for that. Of course, there are little tips and tricks as well. And I think, like you mentioned dinners, and we were talking about dinners. I think that wine in the US, one of the things that's sort of different is like it can be used as like an intimidating factor. And I think that was like, for me, like getting into that like course of the Court of Master Sommeliers, like I wanted to sort of have a right to my opinion and know that my opinion was founded in something that was sort of my own insecurity that I wanted to sort of overcome. But then once you're there and once you realize there's so much gibberish out there. So it's sort of like, okay, what matters? What's important? And like, what's the history? I always thought that was so interesting. Like, I love that there's a sweet wine that Napoleon wanted on his deathbed, and like it's available today for $30. So like there's wine as history that's also delicious and part of a lineage of culture.
Well, one of the things I've always admired when you are educating, whether with staff or you're sort of like treating a table that's trying to learn something, you were able to distill it in a way that wasn't dumbed down, but was full of information and approachable. And listen, for those that are wondering, hey, I'm going to go on Amazon or a local bookstore, and you're going to find hundreds of books about wine, Yes. Introductory books.
Yes.
Most of them are really boring.
Oh, they're so boring. And they're ugly too. Like they're boring and they're not fun to look at. And
no offense.
Oh, no, I know.
They're more textbookish.
Yes, yes.
And I don't know the whole pantheon of books that are about wine and for people to learn a little bit more, but your book is extremely friendly to read, fun to read, and educational. So what else am I going to learn from here? Okay,
let's see. We talk a little bit about pairings. I feel like people always want to learn about pairings. We also go into the blind tasting thing because, in fact, we start there because blind tasting it's like a parlor trick, but really it's a way to sort of learn your own palate.
Why do you say it's a parlor trick? And what do you mean by blind tasting?
Okay.
I know that it's sort of self-explanatory for those that don't know.
Okay, so blind means just you don't know what the wine is. So like I could pour a wine for you and I would hand it to you and I would say, okay, Dave, what do you think this is? You have no information other than what you see, what you smell, and what you taste. And a real aha moment for me was realizing that it's actually a game of logic. And so I think that there's so much mystery enshrouded around wine, and it's really just logical. It's sort of information.
What you mean by that is, what I assume is, there's only certain parts of the world that have these notes.
Yes.
So it's impossible for, this part of Europe to be this wine, so that's completely eliminated. So process of deduction, you get to...
Yes, exactly that. So like there's the nuance of like the grape itself. Like think about like a Granny Smith apple versus a Honeycrisp versus a Red Delicious. They're all apples, but they all sort of present so differently. And then, like for example, we were talking about white Burgundy. White Burgundy historically has been aged in oak, a new French oak barrel. Came from the Gauls, but oak is so expensive. Oak is €1,000 a barrel, which depends on the exchange rate. But right now, that's quite expensive. Plus shipping to get it over. If like any Americans are using French oak, like that, the price of that is going to just go skyrocket right away. But you taste different flavors from the oak that then make it like. And once you can sort of figure out what oak tastes like, it's sort of vanilla-y and spicy, like sort of sweet baking spices. And then also oak is porous, so then you end up with a different texture because oxygen is flowing out and you have more evaporation. And I think, it's sort of when you taste one of these wines where you're like, oh my God, what is this? This is like stirring my soul. And then you can sort of unpack why you have the tools to recreate that experience or to know what you're looking for when you are hosting a dinner party and you want it to be a wine moment. I think wine is so food friendly. These are two things that evolved together over the course of time. And so I think for me, like when I'm drinking a spritz or a margarita or whatever it is, like that's the sort of pre-meal moment. But then with wine, it is such a natural pairing.
And pairing, going to this idea of pairing, it took me a long time, and you're one of the people that helped me recognize, like, oh, Dave, you're dumb. You're missing out on actually like doing this a way that can take the food to another level, and also the revenue in a way.
Totally.
Because even though you're just opening a bottle of wine, you can't just open. There's so much more work to doing it right than just opening a bottle of wine.
Also, it's smart to have a wine program and invest in it because, right, like think of the food that has to get
You're
thrown
the reason
away.
why we invested in a big wine program.
I'm so honored. I'm very honored by that.
But the idea that like, what happens though if, I'm not even talking about restaurants. Like someone comes over to your house and you really don't have anything, and is it okay to just open any bottle of wine that you have?
Could
you know
do
what
that.
I mean? You
Yeah,
could.
I don't know how good it would taste. Like you have to like, there are like some general rules, right? And
what are some of those general rules?
Okay,
So,
and then maybe I'll even start like inverted, like okay, a sort of trick up your sleeve that exists because of the co-sparkling pairing. And this was like at the time, I remember you told me this like before I officially began. You're like, there are a lot of personalities here, and like you're gonna have opinions, and like there are a lot of people who are gonna have other opinions, and like you need to have the better opinion and like be able to like argue it, or else your idea is like gonna die on the floor. Just FYI, like good luck. And I remember it was like those days. Like I think you're the one you said this too. This is a great Davism. It's everything is a test. It's such a good line, and I use it on my kids all the time. But the test in this case for me at Co was like we'd be about to open for service, and then this was like Co in the original location before we moved to Extra Place, and then like an hour before service, like an hour before guests come in, the chefs would be like, so we made a new dish, like that dish is gone, and like now we're doing this new one, like get a pairing. And it's like, what do you mean? Okay, fine, but like we have to hopefully have something here. And anyway, there was this one dish, and it was like an impossible thing to pair with. And we used like anyway, the dish was shishito pepper broth with orange gelée and brioche. So like full of pyrazines, very green. I was like, okay, a sparkling Sauvignon Blanc, that's gonna work. And because we had agreed and committed to this sparkling pairing, the whole point of this test was like, this idea is stupid. We're gonna make a dish that you're never gonna be able to find anything with, like go fuck off. And it took 2.5 nights, but like we ended up, it was actually a book from Francois Chartier, I think that's how you say his name. He was the sommelier at El Bulli, and he wrote a book called Taste Buds and Molecules that I tracked down. And in it, he has a page about sherry being very molecularly complex and how it has like all these overlapping molecules with sort of everything. And sherry's obviously still, I don't even know that we had sherry, but we had vin jaune, which is sherry-ish. It's from the Jura.
great sauce.
Great sauce, right? The chicken with vin jaune sauce. And it's an amazing wine that smells like toasted hazelnuts and French butter. But then it is basically the way you make this wine is it has to be one grape called the Sauvignon grape, and then you ferment the juice, and then you let it sit there under this like furry layer of a yeast called fleur sherry, Lovewall, for 6 years and 3 months. And then it evaporates, and then it gets bottled in this shrunken bottle called the Clavelin, and then it gets sold. So you're sort of like, you inherit the evaporation tax. But it's low in alcohol, and it's really complex molecularly. So from this dish comes the vin jaune rinse. So we rinsed the glass and poured it out, and then we topped it up with a Cremant de Jura. And that pairing, because it's so versatile, ended up staying on the sparkling pairing, moved into Extra Place, and it was like with the
And we got rid of the sparkling pairing.
Okay, yeah, no, that had its moment.
Because we grow, we change.
We have to evolve. Yeah, that was like a moment, and then the moment's gone. But that at least for a couple years, that pairing would stay on because it is so versatile. But as far as like more realistic pairing, by the way, you can do that at any time. if you're stuck. But I think think about texture, think about acidity and sharpness, and think about flavor. So like the texture point of view, if you're having something rich and creamy that's like a lot of butter, you're going to want something that will match that texturally. And for me, that's something that's usually quite creamy and full of mouthfeel, and maybe it's a Friulano from Friuli, something that sort of has weight and texture. So like think about texture, think about acidity. So if you're having something with like lots of lemon or anything that's very high toned, you want a wine that will match that most of the time. One pairing, I talk about it in the book, but this was the Gélanage Shuffle, and it was a salad of baby greens with still water. And like you can do that too. So I think it's all about, having fun with it, not taking it too seriously. Sparkling wine, I think, is great with so many things.
So if somebody's going over to a house, I feel like this is the only time people really buy a bottle of wine for the most part. They're like, oh, I got to bring a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And let's just say they're going to not go to a grocery store. They're going to go buy to a proper bottle shop.
Yeah.
What should they buy?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Let's start with average price point, and then we'll just go high.
All right. Okay. For me, I think like you can't go wrong with champagne. Like let's say you give it to somebody who hates champagne, then they can regift it. So if that's like an easy thing.
What's a good champagne bottle?
Okay. All right. So like I would say like 3 that come to mind right away. Like Beverages, père et fils, so 2 brothers who like grow everything organically, have such passion and precision. The wines are fucking delicious every time, and they range in price points. So they're the more pricey single vineyards, but they're also there's the entry level, which is a reserve perpetuel. Basically, it's like dating back 20 years, where like every harvest a bunch goes in, some comes out and gets bottled. So it's sort of a blend of many vintages, and it's like. I can tell you what it cost in euro at the Bon Marché, but I can't tell you what it costs here because I haven't gone shopping here in a few years.
What's it cost?
At the Bon Marché? About 45 euro.
That's so...
Yeah. It's
with tariffs, that's probably like $70 here.
Yes. Pierre Peters, same thing. So there's a Pierre Peters, that's the entry level is excellent. That's a Blanc de Blanc, so 100% Chardonnay from a very fancy Grand Cru village.
That's It's like a BMW.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It is, exactly. It's like the entry-level BMW.
Yeah.
And then you can go up and you can like get fancier and you can do all the tricks. That's like when you're up there with like Chetillon. If that's like a special, someone's getting married and like that's another.
It's a great champagne.
It's a great champagne. I was also just there, so I'm like thinking of what's top of mind, but Alex Charton of Charton Taillé, I love his wines. And he's just fascinating to talk to. And I remember he was the very first visit that the very first time I ever went to Champagne was there. Rajat Par set up the tasting appointment. And he pointed out, he's like, you're not going to see them in our vineyards, but there are these like specks of blue in a lot of Champagne vineyards. And those were Parisian trash bags that were sold to Champagne as fertilizer. And it actually stopped when the Queen of England came through and she was being toured. And she's like, what are these blue specks? And somebody told her. And she's like, you mean to tell me that what I'm drinking grows on trash? And quickly that got cleaned up because England is such an important market. But the reason I bring it up is because Alex's family always eschewed that. Like that was, his family it has this many generation history of taking notes every single day. And now he's turned that into a book, which is sort of amazing. And then, and also, just like the quality and the intention and the beauty of these delicious grapes. It's like if you take something delicious and you turn it into wine, it's going to be pretty good.
All right. No budget.
No budget.
For a bottle.
Oh my God. Can I go back in time?
You can do whatever you want.
I would have to go red Burgundy. I really would. I mean, 80s, early 90s, like a 90 Rousseau Chambertin. That's such a jerky thing to say. Like that's a ridiculously priced bottle of wine now, but it wasn't.
How much would that be at auction?
We should add that to the show notes. I don't know off the top of my head, but ballpark 10 grand
for one bottle.
Yeah, 5 grand now. But when I was started to date my husband, he had this restaurant called Cru, and it was very fancy.
By the way, Crew was the fucking best.
It's so good.
We adopted a lot of Crew alumni.
You did.
Like 3/4 of the Crew alumni.
It's so great. Oh, it was like, and that wine list was so ridiculous.
So insane.
And that was like my entry point to wine, because like Robert would be like, "Oh, just come over after your shift in the Danielle kitchen." So I'd make my 100 million, not really, but I'd make a lot of tomato confit over the course of the week, and then I would come and he would pour. I remember one particular bottle. It was the 1980 Jaillet Brûlé, and this will date me and show you how old I am, but that's my birth year. And so it was like, that was the first magic bottle I ever had. And Brûlé is this vineyard that like faces the sun. So it's like burned Brûlé, and it, as a result, the grapes were really ripe and delicious. And Henri Jaillet is credited with basically. He was all about, I mean, this gets like into wine geek territory, but he bucked norms in the spirit of excellence, and now so many people do the same sort of techniques that he did. But destemmed everything, used a lot of new oak, really was meticulous in the vineyard, and this bottle was so special. So I would say, like, for nostalgic purposes, that would be a really fun bottle to recreate.
I would say that if you're wanting to learn about wine, this is an amazing entry point to become knowledgeable. But if you're so lucky enough, one of the best education moments you can have for drinking wine is going out with yourself and your husband, Robert. Because you're like, wow, you know fucking everything.
No, it's like you with food. And I think the fun thing about learning is like we learn in a web. So like once you have a few things, then you're sort of the next piece of information just latches on.
I remember looking at you or when Robert looking at a wine, it's like he's looking at the Matrix and he's like, yes. Yeah. And he's like, just,
yeah.
It's, you know what I'm talking about. Speaking of, you guys, again, moved to France, beginning of the pandemic? Right before?
Right after. It was sort of like we moved away. We did a few months on Long Island and had rented a house with a garden and trees. And there was Robert bought a boat for himself on Father's Day one year. And it was like, okay, this is an amazing sort of scenario. And then we moved back a few months later and to our amazingly located, really small Soho loft apartment. And sort of it's hard to raise two growing boys. But we'd get home and open the suitcase, and it was like a tornado had hit the apartment. So it was sort of like, okay, is this the right place for us to be right now? And then we started thinking about, Robert was trying to move us one place, and I was like, no. And then I would try to move us somewhere else, and he was like, never, absolutely not. And then Paris came up. He was like, what about Paris? And I was like, Paris is a city. Do we want to be in a city? And by the way, it's fun to go on vacation, but what's it like to actually live there? And he was very strategic. He took me to this great, it was when no one could travel, and we went away on vacation to Paris for a couple of days in December of 21, which was great. And then we went back in April over spring break, rented an Airbnb, brought the boys, and our amazing nanny at the time came with us. And she was great. She was like, yeah, I would do this for a year. And we're like, really? And then we found this amazing, we live in this really, really amazing place that has a wine cellar and a garden in the back, and it's sort of incredible. And it's right on the street called Rue de Martyrs, and it's in the 9th. But basically, so it's we didn't even know this at the time, but the street, when you're in Paris next, we have to go there. In fact, everything in here, except
you brought me a gift bag of goodies.
I did. Do you want to open it?
Sure.
Okay, all right. One thing I stole from the minibar. That's the original, the ruby grapefruit.
That is delicious. All right, what do we have
Organic.
here?
Okay, so this, Pierre Hermé. So this is, he's just so talented.
He's the man.
He's the man. So this one is the dark chocolate fleur de sel. It's not too sweet. I thought Grace and the boys could
Pierre Hermé is the only person in the world that can bring a box of salt and not look like a douchebag. Because he does. He has a box of fleur de sel in his pocket.
That's very French, actually.
No one else can pull that off except for him. You have to be near godlike status.
So this one is, it's 3 layers. This is the Issoufou jam that he does with this amazing woman, whose name is on here. I want to not say it incorrectly, Christine Ferber. So it's lychee, rose, and then raspberry with, of course, all the seeds strained out. All right, so this is some smuggled French butter, raw milk. There's fleur de sel and doux. So like unsalted.
And this is like, you can get this anywhere.
Yeah, but this is from Quatre Hommes. So this is like the fromagerie.
You know me so well. This is gonna go on some good bread. I mean, I made some food. You can eat it later, but I made it a little bit more French. Not that you're sick of French food already, but do you get tired of eating French food all the time? Because that's all there is. There's good Vietnamese. There's some Japanese.
Well, it's like the thing is, I cook so much because we live next to these amazing places, and also restaurants. Like most restaurants in France don't open until 7, but we have 2 little boys. Yeah, kids. Exactly.
5 o'clock every day.
Exactly right. So it's like, okay, yeah, so like I've gotten really, I feel like when you're in Paris, you're going to come over and I'm going to make you a pole d'agneau, like a great lamb shoulder.
Oh.
And then like there's, so that's like, or just roast chicken. So like the kids are like, is this poulet de Bresse? We're like, no, it's poulet de ferme. They're like, we only want poulet de Bresse.
Which is the most famous chicken in the world. So what's better in the grocery stores there, in the markets?
Okay, so first of all, it's
because like I feel like if I lived there every day, I'd feel like Alain Passard, just buying shit and cooking whatever.
You would have so much fun, and it doesn't get old. I feel like that's my nature walk. I like walk to, and it's like first of all the bakery. Like you buy your baguette and you get the tradition. So that's like a baguette, but made the traditional way. Because there's some bad bread in France too. So you always they're like you just get to know your bakeries, and it's like you buy the bread and it's warm, and that's fun. It's just like that's now. If my bread isn't warm, I'm like, oh, it's not as. No, I'm sounding like such a snob here, but this is just.
You live in France.
I know.
You can. This is your right now.
No
one else knows what you're talking about.
The fruit guys, it's like the fruit, changes on the season. Like I love when we come back from summer and it's plum season, and they're like these fabulous green Reine-Claude plums everywhere, and they taste like gummy bears, and you just like you can make them into a tart, but you can just like eat 10 of them in a row, and that's really, it's just the...
But you're not getting like New York pizza, you're not...
No.
Is it worth sacrificing diversity and variety for just all things French?
Well, I think it's a great question. Next door to us, like as we were moving in, this pizza spot, it's like long fermented dough, the chef is...
So there's everything.
You have like European diversity. There's an amazing Italian shop that's at the bottom of the hill, and like the yogurt comes in a truck. So
you go shopping like every day?
I do, and like...
I fucking can't believe you guys in Europe. What the fuck? Even in like Copenhagen or stuff, like everyone goes grocery shopping like every day. What the fuck?
Because then like your bread is not warm if you buy it the next day, and it's you leave it. No, but it really is a way of life, and it's sort of like apparently there are some delivery services starting, and that was like my life in New York. It's like
Fresh Direct.
Fresh Direct, exactly. But it's like I don't want us to go there. It's sort of like. And it's like effort, you're carrying heavy bags of like the milk from the fromagerie, but it is like you're going to every spot for the different things.
God damn it.
And it's pretty great.
I'm so jealous now.
When you come, you're going to come visit.
Grace, do not listen to this podcast.
Grace, we have some school recommendations.
Well, she would love to move to Paris, my goodness. Well, I can't believe it, man. Like, you forgot your luggage, but you brought me gifts. And I think for anybody watching, that's all you need to know about Jordan.
And Ramona, so actually you were talking about non-alcoholic. Can I share some exciting some news? All right, so later this year, we will have a non-alcoholic. We're launching non-alcoholic sparkling rosé, which I'm excited about.
I scoffed at the idea of non-alcoholic wine because everyone knew that, like, I've been involved with athletic. I'm like, but wine? Come on, that's ridiculous. But those wine sales, non-alcoholic wine sales, are going bananas.
They are, and I think, like, before we do anything Ramona-wise, it's sort of like, what can we add to the conversation? And I'm always shocked at, the fact that, for me, organic's really important. It just... I guess when I was pregnant with our second son, I just sort of became sort of obsessive about that because of not only the way that people who are farming the vineyards or the with pesticides. Yeah, anyway, it's just something that's always been important to me, and I think that it results in better tasting whatever it is, like a better tasting tomato, a better tasting grape, better tasting wine. So that's something that just is part of our DNA. And then, yeah, there's a lot of sugar and stuff, and there are a lot of artificial flavors and colors. So that's sort of the whole point of Ramona is like we actually moved production to Italy so that we don't have to add any secret chemicals to anything, and that it's sort of just as European as it can be. And I think it tastes pretty good. That's the goal.
I can't believe it. I haven't seen you since 2020.
I know.
And here you are in downtown Los Angeles.
And then we're going to be neighbors in Paris soon.
I know. Grace. She's joking. Anything else you want? Where can we find you on Instagram? Jordan Salcito. At Jordan Salcito,
yes. At Drink Ramona. Yeah. You can buy the book at Drink Ramona. There's a little page. It's called Smart Mouth. Hopefully it makes a great gift for
holidays.
For holidays, exactly. I think, buy that with some chili crunch. I think that would be great with your roast chicken. No. So thank you so much. So fun to be here.
All right.
Great to see you.
Thank you, Jordan. So that was Jordan. I'm still cooking down this oxtail. And you're going to get that recipe after this askdave. But it came out pretty fucking good. Buy Jordan's book, Smart Mouth. It's a perfect gift. And, I have to say, sometimes I still wonder, like, how do we get a younger generation tastes of the very nice vintages? And I guess the equivalent would be like, how do you give a 22-year-old to drive a, 1967 Porsche 911? It's like, how do you give a 28-year-old Mickey Mantle rookie card? That's sort of what I'm saying. But the difference is, on those items, objects, you can look at them from a distance, you can read about them, and everything that went into making them. And you can listen to songs that are ancient and beautiful. Thing with food is it's so ephemeral that no one else can really taste it. And with wine, it's now being used more as sort of social currency, in my opinion, and a lot of the prices are just sort of so obscenely expensive that it's just out. It was already out of reach 15 years ago. Now it's really of the provenance for people that are just filthy fucking rich. And the wines that I want to drink, I never really drink because they're just too fucking expensive. So, we don't really have an answer for that, but I think one way that Jordan was saying is something that, again, I mentioned the Anajac Thai guys and the team, and in general is like, we sort of have to create our own different food culture, our wine culture. It happened again with the organic wines, biodynamic wines, and so forth. So I don't know what's going to happen, especially since drinking is much less for every age group, not just Gen Z. So I wonder where and how we judge quality. So that's ultimately the reason I want people to taste it, is because you need to know what the threshold for excellence is, right? So you can sort of carve out where you don't want to go. And that's why it's not for drinking it all the time, in my opinion, because it's just too expensive. But it's nice to know, if you're in this business, right, to measure quality. And in food, that's getting harder and harder because we're getting individuals that don't know exactly how to judge that quality. And I'm worried that, people in the beverage industry, especially wine, they're not going to be able to sort of judge what quality is, because so much of this great wine that you need this knowledge of is just completely unobtainable. So I think there are ways to do that and craft it on your own. Again, I think Anajac Thai is a perfect example. I think what Four Horsemen is doing in New York is also a great example, and they have a new one called Cavallini. It just got reviewed. So in New York City, again, we're talking LA, New York centric, so I apologize. But anyway, a lot more to talk about this. Buy the book, and let's get into a quick Ask Dave.
Today's Ask Dave is from Nick from Ontario, who is a Major Domo cooking level 5, who Nick started baking bread when he was in university about 7 years ago. Thinks of himself more of a baker than a cook. Nick's bucket list meal is the Pambazo food truck that you and Chris went to that one time. And Nick's question is, he and his girlfriend love trying new foods in restaurants, but he feels like he'd rank himself only a 3 on the Major Domo dining scale because he feels like he's scared off of, as you were talking about with wine, some high-priced menus. especially knowing that amazing food can be often found at restaurants that aren't considered fine dining. So his question is, how do you decide when to splurge on a restaurant? Like, which are going to be worth it? And if you're going to splurge, what's your process for choosing a place?
Nick, gotta say, that's right up there in the upper echelon of great questions from Nick from Ontario. Thank you. I just saw Mitch Bates. He used to be the CDC at Co. and CDC at Shoto, a restaurant in Toronto. He has his own ramen shop now in Ontario. So Nick, go visit Mitch Bates' restaurant. One of the most fantastic cooks and chefs I know. And that Pambazo food truck that we talked about, it's very good. And I'll be honest, I have not had it since because I drive past it every day. And every day I'm tempted to buy it, but I've held off because it is a lot to eat at sort of 1 p.m. It's probably my favorite sandwich though. So I haven't had one in like 6 months. I need to really been looking at it a lot because every time I sort of leave, I see the truck and I want to buy it, but I haven't. So you've inspired me to buy it. And for those that don't know, I discovered a sandwich that Ying's known all along, but it's this amazing sort of torta-like thing, but it's not a torta, it's not a semita, it's something completely else. It's soft and it's crunchy, it's everything. So if you see one, eat one. But Nick, the question is, if you're gonna splurge, how do you know which ones are gonna be worth it? When do you decide to splurge on a restaurant? And what are those special occasions? So number one, how do you decide when to splurge on a restaurant? I think that's pretty simple. I think for me, a splurge is a special occasion. It doesn't always have to be, but more and more, since we don't go out as much as we used to, it's definitely more special occasions. But sometimes those special occasions might just be like Korean barbecue or going to get pizza. I think what you're talking about are things that are upper tier, 3 Michelin star, 2, 3 Michelin star dining. And to me, I usually reserve those when I'm going out with friends that are real gourmands. Like for example, I recently ate at Providence because my friend who is coming down from San Francisco has eaten everywhere. He eats everywhere. He's unbelievably successful, so he can eat everywhere, but he also eats everything that's cheap. He eats pambazos. He eats everything, and it pisses me off because he's like rail thin and super skinny, but this guy can eat, and I've known him a long time, and I knew that the one restaurant he hasn't been to is Providence. So a lot of it is I'm choosing it on places that this person who I'm dining with has not been. So we went there. It was just me and him. Our wives couldn't make it. It was fantastic. And by the way, Providence is better than it's ever been, so no surprise there. But I would say that anniversaries, celebrations, those you can't really go wrong. Graduations, start with that. But at the same time, if you get a reservation and it's at a restaurant that's very hard to get at, then you should just go. But I always think about this. I was at a very, very hard to get in sushi restaurant, and I was talking to the chef, and he was saying again how he's probably gonna go to an invitation only system. He was really tired of getting the American finance and tech bros in. And no matter what though, as much as he appreciated the business, he said no matter what changes, he was always gonna make sure that there was a table for people that were just regular citizens of Japan. And that night he had like 2 teachers dining in, and they had saved up to eat there. And it wasn't a special occasion. It was just that they got a reservation and that's what they were gonna do. And I think that if you're able to get a reservation at a restaurant that you want, then that becomes the special occasion. And it can be very expensive. And that's why I think there's so much pressure on restaurants. Maybe there's critics, maybe they're short-staffed, maybe product didn't come in and things are a little substandard. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong. And you have all kinds of excuses as to why maybe the dish or the meal itself didn't live up to the expectations. And that's the hardest part for restaurants that have these expectations, is constantly exceeding these expectations, especially since you've maybe spent couple $1,000s on dinner, because that's what it costs sometimes going to these kinds of restaurants. So the last thing you want is to feel like you got ripped off. Nobody wants that feeling, both the diner and both the people that are serving and making the food. So I've always used that example of, talking about people that are saving money. So I tell the staff, we might get a ton of very wealthy people in here that eat and are able to throw around thousands of dollars on stuff. But let's not worry about them. Let's worry about the people that are not that. Let's just assume that everyone is a substitute teacher from like Delaware that drove up to New York and they chose to eat at our restaurant. We have to sort of suspend sort of reality and sort of make sure that that's our approach, that everybody is somebody that is saving everything to eat at this restaurant, and they chose to spend that money with us. And I think that's a lot of responsibility, and it's a contract. And I think that for us, we need to over-deliver, and I think that gets very difficult to do, and that ultimately is the most pressure I felt, and for restaurants on a consistent basis. It's not about critics, it's not about all the other shit that can put you in the weeds. You want to make sure that you exceed expectations for diners. And it doesn't matter what kind of restaurant, but particularly the restaurants that you're saving up for $500, $600, those are really difficult things to swallow, both for the diner and the restaurant, if both people feel let down or one person feels let down. So my process for selecting usually is getting to know, personally, if I'm dining out with people, where have they gone? What have they sort of missed out at? Or what are they, for example, Mitch, I saw Mitch. Mitch is actually from Ontario. You know what Mitch doesn't get in Ontario as well is Mexican food. So that was clear. It's like, how do we sort of fill this void of something he's missing? And directed it into some delicious places, and got some Mariscos Jaliscos. So good. Anyway, thanks for sending that in. Keep on sending your questions on the podcast, or DM us on Instagram, or email us a 30-second note to askdave@majordomomedia.com. And we'll keep on choosing these great questions, and you are going to win some prizes. I got basically 3 hours till our guest, Jordan Salcito, is going to join us today. And since I was pressed for time, I probably would have used a pressure cooker. Problem with the pressure cooker is you can't really see anything, and I think it's hard for people to imagine how things are cooked clearly. But I'm going to try to cook this at warp speed, and we'll see if this works. But this is oxtail. This literally comes with the tail of a cow. This was traditionally one of the cheapest cuts. It has got a ton of sinew, a lot of muscle fibers. Think about the tail. It's moving all the time. And anything that's moving all the time is going to be extremely tough, but also very flavorful once you get past a certain point in temperature where those muscle fibers and the sinew and the fiber starts to break down. And that's how you get those beautiful sort of braised meat texture. It literally just happens, and happens at a certain temperature. I can't even remember, probably like for a certain amount of time at 325, I would say, 350. It's different if we're going to do a long temp process, but I'm going to season these, just salt. I'm going to trim these up. These I'm going to start roasting off right now because I can't take the fat off. It would be too hard to take the fat off. The producers or the grocery stores, they want to keep as much fat on as possible because it adds to the weight. It literally looks like a tail. And you can break them down. You can cut them down into thin slices, or usually 2-inch cuts. This was historically trash, along with the beef cheek. These are offcuts, and mainly restaurants. I would say the most prevalent cuisines that I think have oxtail would be Korea, in my mind. Oxtails, really important Korean cuisine, Chinese food, and particularly braised oxtails I think are synonymous with the food of Jamaica, because there's a lot of Chinese elements in Jamaican food. So the other thing is, because I'm trying to make this a visual element for you guys, for those that are listening, you'll probably hear the oxtails cooking. I have it on high heat, put some olive oil in there. Probably shouldn't crowd the pot as much, but I don't care. And if you're pressed for time, I would have just put this at 450 degrees, top shelf in an oven, and roast it in the oven. It is much faster because you're heating all elements 360 degrees on this. So I would do it in a wire rack as well. And that's honestly the easiest way and how you would do it in a restaurant. But, you know, since we're doing a podcast that's audio and visual, it probably doesn't make much sense to just pop it in the oven and there's nothing to do. I grew up eating oxtails as long as I can remember. My grandmother would make korikontang, which is basically a Korean soup with oxtails in it. Oxtails produce some of the beefiest flavor in terms of a broth. You can also braise it in the Korean marinade like kalbijim, but traditionally my version that I grew up eating was clean, maybe with some mu, radish. So like imagine something that's similar to like daikon and onion, and maybe some glass noodles in it, the things you might see that go in the japchae. I never saw oxtails again until I went to cooking school and went to French Culinary Institute, and it was actually not even a French. A Japanese student wanted to cook oxtails as a project, and that was the only other time I've seen oxtails. Then it wasn't until Blue Ribbon, the Bromberg brothers, famous restaurant group, and they had a late night eating spot called Blue Ribbon in Soho off Sullivan Street, and Blue Ribbon Bakery that'd be open until like 4 in the morning. And they had a very famous dish of, they were inspired by Fergus Henderson's bone marrow and parsley salad, but they did theirs bone marrow with oxtail marmalade. So they would pick all the oxtail and in a reduction, and you could put that on the toast. You serve with toast and the bone marrow. And I had seen oxtails. We used to make an oxtail terrine when I worked for Marco Canora and Jonathan Beno. That was a real pain in the fucking ass. And also wasn't really that aesthetically pleasing as a terrine. But I had never seen oxtails on any menu that wasn't a Korean restaurant. And I didn't really have Jamaican food till I was in my late 20s anyway. Which I then learned how to make some delicious Jamaican-inspired oxtails. So this is not something you see on restaurants. Not in restaurants that are on a lot of sort of like go-to lists. And I think you see this as more of the provenance of home cooking. This is extremely underappreciated in the fact that it can make a very clean, delicious broth. You can also make something that is a fantastic braise. So if you hear this sizzling, it's browning. I should clearly empty this out so it's not nearly as packed in there, but I'm being lazy. Because I'm browning it, I will turn it into a braise. If I was not braising it and I wanted to make it a Chang, T-A-N-G, is a Korean clear soup, I would have trimmed it up. I would have sort of boiled it for maybe a minute to take out some of the scum and the blood and the impurities, rinse that out, and then cooked it for about 4 hours in garlic and onions and water. That's it. And I would just cook it, and that's how you get that super, super beefy broth. Because I'm now caramelizing the sugars and making the Maillard reaction in this, I've lost the ability to make it a clean broth. So now I'm going to turn it into something that is braised. Now the question is, what kind of braise? I could make, one of my favorite dishes to make is a Jamaican style oxtail. So I would caramelize, get all of this nice and brown. Then I would remove it. Then I would add like 3 or 4 onions, a ton of it, sliced in there, brown that. I'd add some maybe some rock sugar or some kind of dark syrupy sweetness thing. And then I would add, I blend in allspice, tomato paste, maybe ketchup, soy sauce, Worcestershire, habanero pepper, some thyme, maybe a few other things. That's it. Cover with some water, and you're gonna get something super, super delicious. All right, I'm gonna prep out everything else. So this is about 5 pounds of oxtails, and I'm gonna cover it. You're not supposed to, but right now I covered the oxtails with a lid. You can still get it brown. I think it's a misconception that you can't get things brown. In fact, I think this expedites. It helps render out more of the fat, and the water is still going to escape from this pot anyway as steam, as a vapor. So I'm going to prep out the other vegetables. I did originally tell David to get me some mirepoix, carrots, onions, celery, because I was originally thinking to do French style, and might as well continue with that instead of changing it last second. I would say making this kind of food is really if this was like a Madden rating, it would be a very high rating. This is when you're making this, it really is, because it's not pretty, it's ugly delicious, as we say. I think it has a lot more meaning. Now that they're so expensive, it really is a dish of love. So you don't want to fuck it up. And by the way, I don't even peel my carrots anymore. I'm just gonna wash it. I will if they look like shit.
I'm also looking right now on the internet, and you were saying you're unfamiliar with it, but you've actually basically created, there's the queue de boeuf au carat, which is a French braised oxtail, and you basically asked for all of those ingredients, and you're making it.
I've seen French, I have made pot-au-feu, which is boiled meats, which is like one of my favorite dishes. Pot-au-feu is just boiled beef and vegetables, and you get this beautiful broth consommé thing. I love it. I've never seen oxtails in that before. I've seen short ribs, but not oxtails. And I have bollito misto is the sort of Italian version of that. And I have seen oxtail in bollito misto before. But I'm the furthest thing from an expert on either of those things. This is a nice way to use the lid. Start taking the things out that are nice and brown. Usually I feel like, again, since I had this with bread before, anything that's sort of French version, I'm gonna make a bread, but I'm gonna make it more of a flat bread because I don't have the time to make it proper. Because it's either rice or you're dipping bread into it. So this is how I'm gonna make some bread. So flour.
Is that AP flour? Or?
Yep. Some Gold Star yeast. Salt. Sugar. Some water. And I'm just gonna put this on the dough setting on the Thermomix, but I could do this by hand as well. 2 onions, 4 or 5 cloves of garlic. And I have all of the drippings and all of the fonds that are in there, FONDS. Add in onions, and I'm gonna sweat this down. I'm gonna start adding my aromatics, and then I'm gonna put these guys back in there. And then I'm gonna cover with some red wine. And in terms of the cut of these, I'm gonna cut them a little bit bigger, because normally I don't like adding vegetables on a braise until the very end. Not the very end, probably the last hour, because they'll disintegrate into nothing. So what we're gonna do is this. We're gonna do this. Mirepoix is usually 2 equal parts celery and carrots to onions. If this dissolves into nothing, which it might, I might re-add some mirepoix and nice cuts to sort of finish it off. I'm gonna add some thyme. Usually this would be in a bouquet garni, which is wrapped up in cheesecloth, but who gives a shit? I'm gonna add some tomato paste. Oh no, that's fucking mustard.
Spicy mustard braised.
Probably added like a tablespoon of tomato paste. I might add a little bit more. I'm gonna add a bay leaf. But I'm not gonna add that till the end because I don't want to crunch it up. So right now, if I wanted to make this a little bit more Jamaican inspired, I could do it right now by adding some more sugar, maybe some allspice habanero, but we're gonna keep this a little bit more traditional French flavors. I'm gonna put a healthy dose of black pepper. This is when I like to just do the coffee grinder. And I'm using a coffee grinder to put a shit ton of pepper because otherwise it's gonna take me 10 minutes. So now I'm gonna just cover this in a little flour. It will eventually be used to thicken. So it's almost like a roux, but not a roux. Add these guys back in there. Bottle of shitty red wine. I think super sweet, big California red, or anything that is like huge in flavor and sweet is good for braises because that sugar is a great balancing act to all of the other things that are happening. And I'm gonna add this with some water. Okay, so this is my trick. I've done this a bunch, but like this is gonna become more, the viscosity is gonna change. It's gonna get more thick, but the volume of water is, the volume of the liquid that's in here is pretty much what I want when it's all reduced and finished braising. And you could have had stock, you could have had chicken stock, vegetable stock. I think water's fine because the oxtails to me are so fucking beefy and they're gonna just create its own delicious stock. I'm now gonna see where we're at on seasoning. So I wanna season this right now before I add more water or stock to about 90-95% of what's gonna be the final seasoning. And you can see that this is starting to thicken up a little bit from the flour. So right now, we've added back the oxtails to the mirepoix. We've added thyme, tomato paste, bay leaf. We've added a whole bottle of wine and maybe like 4 cups of water. I've now seasoned this with black pepper and salt, a little MSG. You don't have to use MSG. And it's really nice. And the thing is this, if I cook this on a high heat, if I could probably put a little bit more water, put a cover on it and cook it at medium heat or pop it in the oven like 275, 300 for 3-4 hours and it's gonna be done. Currently have an hour and a half. So one way to speed up the process is no different than cooking a turkey. If you cook a turkey faster, you can cook it faster by higher heat, but you're gonna risk burning it. Or you cook it slower, right? But it's gonna take a lot longer. I'm gonna try to cook this as high as this oven top will let me, but I have to add as much water as possible so it doesn't fucking burn. Because now that I've added flour, it's gonna burn more quickly. And that's why I season this right beforehand the way it is, because the salt's not going anywhere. The only thing that's gonna evaporate is water itself, so. And the reason I want that is by the time it gets to that level, a lot of the deliciousness that's in this braising liquid is going to go into the meat. And I don't want unseasoned braising liquid to be inside the meat. I want it to be as seasoned as possible. I'm gonna cover this on a lid. And there's a good chance this isn't gonna be ready. Oh. is bread. So to be honest, I really don't know how much flour I put in here. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know, 6 cups, 4 cups, 5 cups. A tablespoon of, maybe 2 tablespoons of agave, healthy pinch of salt, healthy pinch of yeast. I'm taking this sucker out now. And I oiled up my hands, and I put oil in this glass bowl. If I could just do this for dinner time live, it'd be so much easier. Holy shit. The difference is I'd probably be cooking like 4 other dishes, having to talk to a guest. It's very challenging. So here is the dough. You know, feels good. Is this going to be a dough I want to turn into a Pullman loaf? Absolutely not, or any other loaf. This is going to be flatbread.
What would you have had to do to make it something?
No, I would have risen. It would have been properly hydrated. I probably would have let it like slowly ferment. What I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to answer some emails, do some work, and every time this goes down, reduces down too much, I'm now watching that because I don't want the bottom to burn. So occasionally, I'm going to stir this. And this is dark art sandbagging, right? And when there's not enough water in there and it becomes more viscous, then those sugars are going to burn. So I want to change that ratio and constantly be adding water so it doesn't burn. Okay, Jordan's going to be here in 30 minutes, so let's just see where we're at. This needs another hour, at least. This is a non-pressure cooker. And really, well, again, we're trying to get the collagen to literally break down into gelatin and all the sort of the myosin and actin and the sort of the protein structures to denature, and they're going to just all of a sudden get soft. You can go too soft, and again, the best way to test this, if you have, say, a short rib or a brisket or something, is you put your finger in there, and then it sort of slowly comes back like it's an air mattress or like a memory foam. It slowly comes back. It's too much when you push it in and it never comes back. Most people will say that's perfect. That's way too much for me. And this has been cooking like 2.5 hours. So honestly, 3.5 is probably the right thing. Low and slow is fine, but I honestly think as long as you keep it constantly submerged, you can cook it at a higher temperature. I would, again, because of the meat structure on the oxtail, that's fine. I would never cook anything beef-oriented on a high boil other than this. And even still, you don't really need to. If you were going to cook it more quickly, you should have this. This, to me, is the better investment. This is like 49 bucks. And the reason I talk shit about the Instapot is because it's basically this. This is all it is, except it doesn't have UX and it's not electric. So this is the normal pot. That's what I always joke. And this is going to be definitely done, in my opinion. It can get scary, I won't gonna lie. I would say this, to Instapot's credit, an electric pressure cooker, because that's all it is, seems to be way safer. I'm letting the pressure valve out. Because I would be unable to open this otherwise. Still not there. That's very hot. gonna check on the doneness. Well, number one, you know it's done because I literally just pushed these forceps through. And that to me is perfect. There's just enough of that fat that I left to hold it together. You can definitely cook this till well, it will fall off the bone. But this to me is, the collagen is cooked. There's a lot of gelatin in this sauce, and that's another thing. If you cook a soup, if we're making a soup and you let it come, chill it, it's going to turn into Jello, and that's how much gelatin is in this. Nothing has more gelatin, which is why, like, for protein, honestly, I'm gonna lie. Like, I don't know how much fucking protein is in this compared to, say, other hunks of beef or but we're cooking this. So what the fuck am I supposed to do? I'm gonna strain this out. This is just a personal preference. Like, I don't love mushy vegetables. So what I'm gonna do is remove the oxtails that I have. I'm gonna strain this out. And I'm gonna refresh the sauce as it reduces down with new aromatics. I'm just straining this out. Colander would work as well. I don't even have this sort of strainer at home. Now that I think about it, I should have one because it's extremely fucking useful. It needs to reduce down. And I put it in this brasier because it's going to evaporate more quickly. But before I do, I want to add some veg. So again, you don't have to do anything that I'm doing. This is a little bit more restaurant-y cooking. I would never do this at home. Truthfully, I'd probably added the vegetables now. At this point, if I was just cooking this normal, like most normal people, now I'd be adding the mirepoix. Because at 90 minutes, this will be done. And that way, I still want the vegetables to be soft, but I don't want them to be disintegrating. Because there's so much texture components in food that is super, super underrated that people aren't thinking about. And one of which is how you're going to eat this very soft dish. You're not eating the bones, but texturally this is very one note. I just feel beef dishes in general take black pepper extraordinarily well. I'm gonna add another sprig of thyme. And I'll just pick that out later. Another thing I love with beef that I didn't grow up eating, but I grew to really love are leeks. I love leeks. Well, these are in the allium family. And I'm gonna add the bottoms of scallions to this. By the time the vegetables are soft, the meat should be perfect. Again, not too falling off the bone. And it should be glazed and properly seasoned. In a restaurant, you might put this in the oven because you want to get it nice and caramelized on top, but I'm not going to do that. Where pop it in the oven and you're constantly sort of napping the meat, and then it gets concentrated and gets really like caramelized and beautiful. But there's been enough restaurant cooking today for me. And I have some parsley that I'm gonna add as garnish. Slivers of garlic back in there. And I'm gonna put some of this parsley in there as well. Just because it has some of the stems. And the stems to parsley, the stems to cilantro are very underrated. They're like little bursts of parsley juice if you bite into it. pretty fucking good. It tastes like beef. It's so beefy. And again, this is where that fresh spree of thyme. So I like adding aromatics and mirepoix again at the end because you have different layers. So we added, if I had fresh bay leaf, I'd put that in now, fresh laurel leaf. But the thyme, the mirepoix, the garlic, at the beginning gets muted. You sort of cook off a lot of those beautiful compounds, and they're there, but they now become like a nice base layer. And sometimes you want that muted flavor. So it's there, it's like literally like a bass in a band. And now I wanted to add sort of the same things that are going to be more vibrant, more cooked through, and they're still going to be cooked down and muted, but like blends in and different flavors. And, you know, again, it would taste totally different. I just sprinkled it raw. You could do that if you cut it thin enough, but that's not sort of what I would do. I think the goal is when you're having a dish like this, you don't want the flavors to be totally muddled. You want to be able to pick out all the things that you've put in there. And like you have the low note and the high note, and together, I think that makes something extraordinary. Yep, I've got the bread. We can work on that now. So this has been, I don't know what, 90 minutes? Not that long. The reason you want to slow ferment it is you get a completely different aroma, a different flavor altogether. This is not that kind of bread. This is just oil stretching, mainly because I don't want to get a pin out. I don't want to get flour out. It's just way less messy. The things that are messy are my hands, and I'm fine. I'm washing them anyway all the time. What I love doing when I have the grill out is grilling these. So nice. What you're seeing today is literally how I cook at home on a Saturday, Sunday, friends coming over. This exact meal. Maybe a really simple salad, sauteed, sauteed corn, roasted potatoes. Perfect. You can't eat this kind of food without bread or rice. I'm not on noodles on this kind of shit. Egg noodles could theoretically work, but if there's holes in it, I don't give a shit. That's what I love about this bread. It really is. Satisfies the need for hot bread. Nothing beats breaking hot bread. I think it's one of the reasons why I love Major Domo, the restaurant, where we do Bing, griddle flatbreads like this. The act of breaking bread, I don't know, I think something's hardwired in our DNA to sort of enjoy it. And highly encourage you to do it. Any kind of bread. And I want to be honest with you guys. I've never made this dish before. Never. I've made a lot of braised beef dishes with red wine, specifically short ribs. But I've never made it with oxtails. But this is why I think it's good to learn how to cook intuitively. It's like doing math problems to some degree, or being able to write a paper. Once you have the basics and the fundamentals, you can start to use your imagination and construct them in ways that maybe somebody else hasn't. I don't know if this is authentic. I don't know if this is perfect, but I do know it's delicious and it's very simple to make. Looks complicated, but really not. Again, I would say the only caveat to making bread this way is the temperature. So if you had a griddle, great. Grill is fine too, but trying to find the right temp can be difficult, so it doesn't burn. All right, we're gonna plate this up. We have our bread. We have our oxtails, and I'm gonna garnish this now. Parsley, some scallions. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to the show on Spotify and YouTube at The Dave Chang Show. Send us your Ask Daves again to askdave at Major Dome Media. Thank you to Jordan Salcito. Thank you guys, Dave, Felipe, Molly. We're getting one step closer to the final move here at the studio. and you're going to see some big changes in the Dave Chang Show. But till then, thank you.